Folks, when you give somebody a gift, you want them to enjoy it immediately. You don't want to spend an hour on the phone walking them through how to hook up their Wi-Fi password or how to plug in or how to download some pictures. What I'm talking about, of course, is one of those digital frames where you can put pictures on for your grandparents, your parents, if you want to send them to your siblings or whomever it is. It's a great way to keep in touch. But the problem always is then invariably you're giving a piece of technology that you don't think is terribly sophisticated, but they think it is some type of like multi-dimensional Rubik's Cube. That's the beauty of Aura frames. You can give this as a gift to people who are not quite so tech savvy, and they're going to enjoy it from the moment they take it out of the box. All they need to do is plug it in, which everybody knows how to plug it into the outlet. And this is why. You purchase one of these beautiful frames. They're beautiful. You download the Aura app for free, and then you just set up the frame. You don't have to take it out of the box. You don't even have to see it. You just get a link, and you can load up the pictures, and you can even set it up to attach to their Wi-Fi. They just have to know their Wi-Fi name and their password, which sometimes can be a problem, I get. But, I mean, they're not going to have to do anything. It is super simple. In fact, Wirecutter called it the best digital picture frame. It is a great gift, even for the most tech unsavvy people in your life. Give the perfect gift this holiday. Visit auraframes.com/majority today and get your $30 off their best-selling frames. These frames sell out quickly, so get yours before they're gone. That's AURA frames.com/majority. Use the promo code majority to get $30 off their best-selling frame. Put the links in the podcast and YouTube description. Terms and conditions do apply. Now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, on the trial of the century, or I should say on the secret trial of the century, or rather, the trial of the century is secret no more. It's a little complicated. U.S. concerned that Israel used the white phosphorus that U.S. provided them in an inappropriate way.
Oh, the chemical weapon?
Yep.
Yeah.
Gazans are given confusing evacuation orders as bombs rain down upon them and disease spreads throughout both the north and south of Gaza. Meanwhile, Biden decries anti-Semitism and then tells Jews, were it not for Israel, you wouldn't be safe. That was Biden, not Trump. Those of you following at home. Inflation rate declines again, but rents continue to be too damn high. Texas Supreme Court rules to force a woman to carry a non-viable fetus to term moments after she flees Texas for an unnamed non-government sexual control state. UAW files unfair labor practices against Honda, Hyundai, and Volkswagen. House preparing to impeach Joe Biden as Republicans in the Senate scoff at them. Countries at risk at-risk countries call COP28 proposed climate agreement a death warrant. And lastly, George Santos in plea talks. All this and more on today's program. Wow, it's Newsday Tuesday.
It is.
Except we got a guest, and I can't even read anything I've written today. I don't know what's going on.
What color did you choose today? Is that orange?
Yeah, I've got to get to...
That was interesting. Interesting choice.
Yeah.
Your blue marker, you left the cap off after you left. Don't you worry, I put it right back on.
Oh, well, thank you. I
Look at that.
appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm a female
falling apart over here.
caretaker.
Yeah. Follow me around, putting the caps on my
Don't want
magic
your
markers
to get dry.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. We got a lot to get to today. A lot of big stories. We have actually two. I didn't headline this, but Google had lost a different antitrust case in San Francisco yesterday involving their app store. But the bigger one, of course, is the search engine trial. And that went from like a completely shrouded in secrecy trial to one that is now a little bit more out in the open. And you can see why Google wanted to keep this stuff in secrecy. We'll talk to Luke Goldstein about that in a moment. But first, this case out of Texas. This is in many ways I want to say a view into the future, but it really is a view into the present as well. And
could be seen as kind of a landmark case that I would imagine Democrats are going to point to Kate Cox and her case in particular once we get even closer to the election in around a year.
I would certainly hope so, because this is exactly the culmination of a lot of things that people have been warning about for years and years and years about these things. We've got two clips, right? We have what do we have here?
We got the clip of.
Yeah.
Actually,
okay.
but speaking of the warning one, Bradley, do you have the? We do have a campaign ad, which kind of.
Let's play the campaign ad first to give you a sense of how this is going to be articulated and expressed. Because yesterday, Kate Cox, we had been following this story over the past week. She is pregnant. I think this is her third pregnancy.
Yep.
And she was diagnosed, their fetus, I should say, was diagnosed with a genetic disorder, trisomy 18, I think it is. And the according to doctors, the chance of this fetus was likely to be non-viable. And to the extent that there was any chance for it to be viable upon birth, it likely couldn't live more than a month. And what the real concern in terms of the health of Kate Cox was that in the event that the fetus died, it would very likely, and she's had a couple of cesarean sections before, very likely make it impossible for her to get pregnant again. And apparently she wants to get pregnant again. And so that's where we were. The doctor went to a judge to get an exemption from the state's ban on abortion. The judge in Travis County provided that exemption. And then the Attorney General of Texas, the one who was nearly impeached because of all of this corruption, Ken Paxton wrote a letter basically threatening everyone with being criminally prosecuted if they in any way helped her get an abortion. She went to the Supreme Court of Texas, and before that ruling was handed down last night, she fled the state to go to a free state where the government there does not attempt to dictate to someone who is pregnant that they must be forced to carry the fetus to term. My suspicion is, and there's about, I think, 5 states that have shield laws from the Texas law. Remember, there is both a ban there, but there's also, they have another law in Texas which allows private citizens to civilly sue anyone who is involved in an abortion. And
Aids and abets, a cab driver, anybody.
A doctor, let's say. And it'll be interesting to see if they can sue the airline that flew from, presumably if she flew out of state, or I don't know, sue the state for building a highway that she was allowed to ride on to go to a different state and get an abortion. But some of those states have shield laws which protect citizens in their state from a lawsuit from out of state. Nevertheless, here is a
this is an ad from 2022. So it basically predicts exactly what happens. And this is Mothers Against Greg Abbott in Texas.
Thank you for your patience. There's no easy way to say this, but your baby has a catastrophic brain abnormality.
What does that mean?
It means that parts of her brain didn't form. Your daughter, if she is to survive, will live only a matter of hours after birth. During that time, she will experience a multitude of seizures and ultimately aspirate on her own bodily fluids. She will suffer. A decision will need to be made on termination. I wish I could tell you what to do, but there is only one person who can make this choice.
How much time do I have?
And that person is Greg.
Greg?
Who the f*** is Greg? Yeah, let me just give him a call.
Hey, Greg. Dr. Robinson here. Listen, I've got a pregnancy that could... Yes? But I think this one is the... Yes, okay. Sure. Okay, I'll let them know. Yeah. That's gonna be a no. Best of luck to you.
Great ad.
That is exactly what took place here. Exactly what took place, except for the light doesn't clap going on. So the Supreme Court in Texas found that Ms. Cox's doctor, Damla Carson, asked the court to pre-authorize the abortion, yet she could not, or at least did not, attest to the court that Mrs. Cox's condition poses the risks the exception requires. But later in it, the court wrote, the exception does not mandate that a doctor in a true emergency await consultation with other doctors who may not be available. The exception is predicated on a doctor's acting within the zone of reasonable medical judgment, which is what doctors do every day. Now, what does reasonable medical judgment mean? Well, we do know that in the first court that ruled on this, the court in Travis County wrote, Dr. Carson, quote, believes in good faith, exercising her best medical judgment that an abortion was medically recommended course of action. So, in other words, what the Supreme Court of Texas is saying, because they're not looking, they don't find fact here. They just look at what has been offered. That reasonable medical judgment does not include necessarily a doctor's best medical judgment. So in other words, there has to be some type of board. Now, of course, they just said in a true emergency, a doctor doesn't have to await consultation with other doctors. So what they're suggesting here is that maybe this is not a true emergency.
Her future fertility that could be immediately impacted upon the death of this fetus, which is quite likely, or its non-viability. That's not emergency in any way.
We don't know.
Wow.
We don't know what constitutes a true emergency in the minds of the state Supreme Court. We don't know what constitutes reasonable medical judgment in the minds of the state Supreme Court. And there's no way for us to know. It apparently asked the medical board to, quote, provide guidance in response to any confusion that currently prevails. Now, I don't know what the Texas medical board can say. They can say one of two things. One, well, we should leave it up to the best medical judgment of the doctor, which the earlier court already established they found was offered. Or you say, well, you need a team of 5 or 6 doctors. The whole point is this is all circular.
Yeah.
There is only a group of people, however many are on that state Supreme Court in Texas, who will decide these things as they come up. And so the idea is we're going to allow it, basically, Ken Paxton to write a letter threatening everybody if there's an abortion coming, until the point where we don't need to write that letter because the threat will just exist in the air. And to give you a taste of who's sitting on that Texas Supreme Court that is going to make this sort of like assessment or going to be able to address this, here is, this is one of them when they were up for...
Texas Associate Supreme Court Justice John Devine, and he's speaking here in 2012.
This is at a campaign event, and he's up for re-election in 2024. But here he is in 2012, just to give you a sense of who is making this assessment as to whether there is a reasonable medical judgment being made that someone might need an abortion.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want to submit to you that before I ever got in politics, my convictions were forged in the crucibles of the pro-life movement. I ran into a bunch of crazy Catholics, and they talked me into rescuing at abortion clinics. And I rescued in Austin and Corpus Christi and was arrested 37 times. Now, isn't it an irony that today I stand before you as one who could very well win the Texas Supreme Court?
Yeah, irony doesn't mean what he thinks it does.
No.
But is...
Yeah. These are ideologues, obviously. They're theocrats. But I just want this case to come up every single time Republicans or, people that want to like water down what they're actually trying to do here, bring up exemptions in anti-abortion laws, like rape and incest exemptions and also life of the mother exemptions, because those are, as we've been saying on this program for a while, merely fig leaves in order to water down the real barbarity of abortion bans at 6 weeks or at 12 weeks or wherever you're seeing this kind of stuff across anti-abortion states. They just are lies in order for people to feel a little bit better about supporting Republican politicians in this instance, because life of the mother is supposed to be taken into consideration here. And I guess it's only her like literal life. Or if she has to be bleeding out, potentially maybe they'd save her. But her future fertility, which is like supposedly what the Republican Party wants, right? Like they want these fertile women to be able to be controlled in that way. They want more babies to be born. They are okay with her getting punished by God, I guess. That's really what it boils down to.
And again, the point being, these exemptions are they're a joke.
Yeah.
These exceptions are a joke. It's impossible to make these assessments. They will not. We just saw an example of the state Supreme Court not trusting the doctor to make this assessment. And the point is, there is not a single procedure that you can engage in a hospital where there is a 100% assuredness about any outcome. There is not a single affliction that you can have where there is a 100% assuredness about what it's going to do to you. There is never, ever a situation where you can say definitively, we need to do this, and it will, we need to do this or this person will die, or if we do this, this person will live. There's always a gray area, a 10, a 20%, a 30%, 40% gray area. And even when it's 99% to 1, means in 1% of those cases, that's going to turn up. And so it's always a farce, these exemptions, these exceptions. They are there to create confusion, and they are there essentially to function as intimidation factors, to chill the doctors. And that's why you're seeing stuff like, what is it, in Idaho? Or is it that there's no maternity wards there? Because anybody involved in obstetrics, they're too afraid to go and work there. And this is the whole point of these type of exemptions there, or exceptions. I mean, they're there to, make it seem like we're being, like you say, Emma, that we're being humane, and we're not monsters, but in fact they are monsters.
It's a fig leaf.
They are monsters. I imagine we're going to be hearing more about this going forward, because at one point I imagine Kate Cox is going to speak out about this more. I mean, this is the type of stuff that I would imagine radicalizes a person. But it is in many respects shocking, but also inevitable. This is where we were headed to. This is where we were headed to 7 years ago. It was quite clear. This was a very possible potentiality once.
I can already anticipate that the Democrats will, she might testify about this, and then she'll get the Christine Blasey Ford treatment by the right. Oh, it's all the Democratic Party exploiting it, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. But these stories are going to get more and more frequent.
The best leftist says, my partner and I had a pregnancy where the fetus had trisomy 13. The fetus was mutating and was going to continue to do so until its heart exploded. Every doctor's appointment was part of a nightmare. Luckily, we lived in Hawaii, and they gave us our options and let us decide. We decided to continue with the pregnancy for an extra 6 weeks, which pushed it out to around 27 weeks. So we old enough to get the necessary testing done to see if the issue was genetic or just 1 in 3,140 pregnancies that end up this way. I can't even describe the effects on my partner who had to go through all this. It was, I was with her every step of the way, but I still cannot fathom what she went through. Her bravery allowed us to confidently have another child a couple years later, and our daughter is now 9, the most amazing thing to happen to each of us. What they are doing to that woman in Texas is torture.
Yep.
Like I say, we'll be talking more about this, I imagine, in the future. And in a moment, we're going to be talking to Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, on the trial of the century, which is a secret trial no more. But first, a couple words from our sponsors. This is a great gift that, I don't know, I think they first sponsored the show years and years ago, because I sent it to my parents then. And it's something actually that I'm going to actually even send to myself for the sake of my kids. It's a really unique gift. Storyworth is one of our sponsors today, and it's offering $10 off your first purchase at storyworth.com/majority. What is Storyworth? It is an online service that basically helps you to not only get to know your parents. I mean, you could do this with your uncles. I think it's, it's a multi-generational thing. Your grandparents, and preserve their memories and stories for years to come. And I can tell you from experience, you put it off, and then in some instances, it's just too late. Because, we get older. Sometimes people pass away. Sometimes people forget things. But Storyworth, what it does is it sends to your whoever you gift this to, and like I say, it's sort of a gift for both of you. It sends whoever you gift this to an email once a week, and you can change some of the frequency to your relative or to your friend or whomever it is. A single life-related question that you have picked from their collection, like what's the bravest thing you've ever done, or what's the farthest you've ever traveled, or if you could wake up tomorrow and had one superpower, or I don't know, what was your favorite car? I'm just trying to think of ones that we had. Or, tell me the weirdest event that ever took place in your life. It can be the most innocuous, and I actually have found that the most innocuous questions provide the most interesting stories sometimes, because the people don't feel the pressure, and they don't think that what they're offering is something, particularly unique, and then they just keep going, And all they have to do is they reply with a story. One, you can read the stories as they go along, but after a year, Storyworth compiles all of your loved one's stories, and you can also submit photos into a beautiful keepsake book that you obviously have, and you can share, and you can revisit for your kids or for your.
Right.
I mean, it really is a great gift. With Storyworth, you're giving those you love a most thoughtful, personal gift from the heart, and then preserving the memories and stories for years to come. Everybody has this idea that I'm going to do this for either your parents or I'm always thinking I'm going to do this for my kids, and I don't.
Right.
And this is why I'm thinking actually about sending it to myself. While I can still remember some of my stories. Go to storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. Also, sponsoring today's program is, like I say, my memory is going a little bit. And what I always forget to do is I can get on a habit where I take my multivitamins every day until the bottle runs out. And then I forget.
Right.
And then I'm like, I've lost it. And then I'm supposed to buy them. And then I forget to buy them. And then I start the whole process over again about 6 months later. That was, of course, until I started using Ritual. One of the things I love about Ritual, again, is that they will send it to you on a regular basis. But the beauty of Ritual is that you don't have to trust a stranger, some type of vitamin company, to be delivering you the best vitamins and the best high quality vitamins and all the elements in your vitamins from places that are appropriate or are, not known for having problems with, different areas, using different pesticides or whatever it is. Ritual is a scientifically developed multivitamin that has high quality key ingredients in clean, bioavailable forms. But these ingredients are clean because it's fully traceable, and that's what's awesome. They let you know where these things are coming from. It's a big leap forward, and I mean everybody should do this, but they don't. Ritual has a new type of 2-a-days. So you can have support health with omega-3 DHA to normal muscle function, normal immune function with vitamin D3. Small step can have a major impact. For me, I use the over 50 male formula because I'm over 50 and I am a male. And so that's the one I use, but you should check it out. My doctor has not been complaining about my vitamin D for now multiple years, and that is a function of Ritual. Essential for men, quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. Go check it out because they have it for all different ages and genders and whatever your specific needs are. Ritual is offering my listeners 30% off during your first month. So check it out. Visit ritual.com/majority. Start Ritual or add Essential for Men to your subscription today. Links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Quick break, and we'll be right back with Luke Goldstein. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, who has been spending his time in a trial for at least for the better part of this trial. You did not have much access to information, which is a fairly unique and I imagine very frustrating experience as a reporter. Before we get to that Google antitrust trial, just last night, a jury ruled that Google had violated antitrust laws in a different antitrust case. Just give us an overview of that one as a way of contrasting it to what some people are calling the other case, the trial of the century.
Right. Yeah. And thanks for having me on. So as for the case that I did not directly cover, but the news just broke last night. So this is an antitrust case between two private parties. It's Epic Games, which owns Fortnite. They brought a case against both Apple and Google for their cross-ownership monopolization of the app stores. So in the Google case, it's the Play Store that they have on Android devices. So Epic Games, back in 2020, I believe it was, they put out a notice to their users to, suggest them to buy the app from outside of Google's App Store, and Google had penalized them for that. Epic Games was mad about these really high fees that are placed on app developers. So they brought this case, and it's been making its way through the courts. And that was a jury case, and the jury unanimously ruled in favor of Epic Games that Google illegally had monopolized the store and punished Epic Games.
If a jury finds that Google has monopolized at least, the app sales for Android, right? And I imagine there's a case. Is there a case going on against Apple as well by Fortnite?
Yeah, well, Epic lost the case against Apple. That was settled about a year ago.
Okay,
yeah.
So if I'm also on the App Store and I know that let's say the Majority Report app, for instance. I don't happen to sell it, but maybe someday I would. But subscriptions, you can get a subscription through it. Now, Apple, of course, takes like 30%. Maybe it's reduced a little bit. But if I was like maybe making a game and it costs $5, could I take that jury's finding and bring another suit against Google and say like, I wasn't punished by Google, but I had self-censored because I knew that this was their policy and I didn't have the money to fight it in court. But now that I see like it's established that they've established a monopoly, I'm similarly situated as Fortnite. Is this going to open the floodgates?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of parties, you guys may be included, that will benefit from this ruling, and you won't actually have to file a separate lawsuit. So
there's going to be class action.
Well, there's going to be a remedy for that case. So Google is probably going to have to divest from its Play Store, and it'll be owned as a separate entity. The remedies in all these cases are pretty tricky, and that one hasn't been decided as well. But there's going to be a whole different process for how that App Store is run. It won't be by Google, likely.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, great. So we have that set, and it's in some ways it's as simple as that, right? I mean, it's like they have a monopoly. They just need to divest so that they don't have sort of like these incentives to favor their own stuff in that respect. All right. Let's talk about this other case that you've been covering more closely. People were dubbing it trial of the century, and then we didn't hear much about it, and that's because Google had managed to basically make all of the details of the case, or the ones that were the most important, secret. Walk us through this.
Yeah. So let me just first say, big picture. The whole story of public access in this trial ended up being extremely critical for the government's case, because all the public pressure from the outside eventually led at the end of the trial to the revealing in open court of probably the most important piece of evidence that we got in the whole trial, and that Google was trying to keep hidden the entire time. That was kind of what all these tactics were about. And that is how much Google pays primarily Apple and Android, as well as other carriers, to be the default search engine across, all of the internet. It's why it's pre-installed on, most products that people use to access the internet. And that number is $26 billion.
That's extraordinary.
It's greater than the GDP of a lot of small countries, as I note in the story. And that's really, this is the heart of the government's case.
Now, let me just be clear about one thing. We're not talking about this is available to the public, but that literally that figure would have been obscured from even the prosecutors. Is that right? Well, no. So they were citing the numbers in closed court from business contracts. Part of the theory of the case here is that the narrative that develops, outside of the courtroom and as well as just having evidence to assess the judge's decision is extremely critical here. We don't know how much it came up in closed court. We don't know if the government eventually decided we'll push for this in open court, or if it had been behind closed court. The lack of transparency is, kind of the issue here, So it could also influence the judge. I mean,
exactly.
If the judge doesn't feel like they're going to be judged by the court of public opinion, I mean, it's like and the point being that if Google's only paying like $15,000 amongst all the people who have browsers and devices and this and that, to default their search engine, they don't see any value to it. If they're paying $26 billion, which is a significant portion of their revenue, to doing it, then they are basically de facto admitting this is really important. Yeah. So it blew a hole in Google's argument the whole time, because Google had been saying, we have these default agreements, but they're kind of just outdated. They're from a long time ago. With Apple, it's dating back to 2007. It's not that important to us. We can maybe do without them. And, when they revealed this number, it's like, well, you're handing over 10% of your total revenues to maintain these default agreements. And then we got another figure that was critical later, specifically the default revenue sharing agreement with Apple, which is the biggest one. Google hands back to Apple a third of the revenues that it collects from all of Apple's devices, computer and mobile, as part of this agreement. I mean, they're practically partners. I mean, like literally practically partners. Okay, so let's go back. That's the sort of like the I guess the holy grail is that knowing that number in this instance. Let's go back. The case is about the fact that Google is the default search engine, and are they essentially making it impossible for any other search engines to emerge when they have essentially cornered the market on how you access it? Like, for instance, right now, if I go to my iPhone and I put in the URL, like some term, Luke Goldstein, it'll take me to Google to search you. And I never made that choice. It's just default. Let's go through what's the evidence that default makes a difference? I mean, if I can change this, and I think Google has their mantra was like, it's 4 clicks away or something, right? Or something like that. Go explain that. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I'll take this step by step. So just first of all, so this is the first major monopolization case that's been brought by the government in almost 20 years. The Microsoft case was the last major one. So to win these kinds of cases, it's a Section 2 Sherman Antitrust Act. You have to prove first that a company holds a monopolistic position based on, a certain amount of market share, which is somewhat flexible. But in this case, that's not really up for dispute. Google, by its own admission, has well over 90% market share of search engine, the search engine market.
Then the second step is you have to show that the company has used its monopolistic position to harm competitors here. So what the government argues is that these default search agreements are, really the kind of bread and butter. But what defaults do is they automatically give Google a certain amount of scale, because people are just, set up, pre-installed to use Google. They get a huge amount of traffic with that. And the traffic, the number of search queries on Google's devices basically gives it an advantage to refine the machine learning that drives the algorithm and improve the search engine function for its product. Okay. And Google's also collecting huge amounts of data through all that traffic. The data is the premium factor for advertisers, which is, of course, how the company actually makes money. So that scale and data advantage is basically an insurmountable barrier for any kind of upstart rival search engine that's trying to get into the market, that's trying to build a better product, or, as we heard from some of the witnesses in this case, a completely different kind of business model for search engine. So we heard from this company called Neva that probably not many of you have heard of because they had a very hard time getting off the ground. It was actually run by the CEO was a former Google employee who knew the inner workings of the company, knew how the defaults worked, and said in open court, the default agreements are one of the main reasons why we could never get any traction. They wanted to build a privacy-focused search engine that you would pay, essentially a very small subscription to use it, and they would make their revenues that way rather than, selling advertising. When they would try to get distribution deals from carriers, internet companies, they would have meetings with executives and they would say, we'll let you on, but we're going to have to restrict your traffic, basically, because we have this agreement with Google. And if there's anything that comes close to violating that contract, we could lose a huge amount of money. And, we're wary of doing that. So the government brought forward
That's literally
a bunch of
like saying,
yeah,
we will, we'll feature your product in our store, but if it starts selling a lot, we're going to have to take it off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
If you succeed, we're going to have to stop you. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, and then I think then that's where we're at with like the anti-monopolistic element of this is just like, should this company be able to be a one-stop shop for all of this kind of like internet usage, because it creates inherently anti-competitive incentives just based on the size alone. If you could just respond to that, Luke, but also if you could expand more on what you talked about how they hoard data and how useful that is in terms of maintaining a revenue stream, because like the products that Google has come out with recently, I mean, I'm old enough to remember that Google Glass that went nowhere. Like, you've got that how outside of that are they, I mean, that seems to me from the outside like how they make their money with the collection of all that data.
Yeah, absolutely. So, two quick points here, and then I'll expand it out. So, I mentioned these smaller competitors, Neva, there's another one, Branch Metrics, but the default agreements are not just this kind of, it's sort of a carrot and a stick. So there's a carrot in that they're handing over all this revenue to the big companies in this kind of oligopolistic arrangement. It's also a stick in that Apple at one point, as we learned through evidence that was eventually made available to the public, Apple had actually considered at one point creating its own rival search engine. And when Google caught wind of this, they sent them, essentially a warning shot that was like, no default placement, no revenue share. We're going to take away, the billions that we hand over to you. Apple also considered creating a sort of a choice screen that you could decide what you wanted your default to be. And Google said the same thing. We'll punish you by taking away all this revenue that we're handing over to you.
That's extraordinary because you get that like on your you get that from like Chrome or from Safari, let's say, or any browser. At one point, you'll get a pop-up that'll say, "Do you want this browser to be your default browser?" And just the existence of that would have cost Apple billions of dollars.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And some of those have been recent developments as well. So, yeah, I mean, you have a whole range of rival competitors that are being harmed, and it takes away, choice for consumers. But, as you mentioned, Emma, part of this case as well is that users are essentially harmed as well. Google being this ubiquitous product, they can collect however much data that they practically want. Some of the policies have changed, but they have these individual profiles that they then sell to advertisers to make money on ad spots. And also, to bring it back to this default agreement, the $26 billion is many times over how much Google also invests in research and development just to improve the product for users. So you have a very clear situation here where a company has become so dominant that it is investing more in just maintaining its monopoly rather than improving product for consumers, which is really kind of the heart of the matter.
There was a quote that you had in your piece. I can't remember what it was, along the lines of like, we don't have to spend anything on improving this thing. We've locked it all up.
Yeah.
Which is, go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost even better. I'll tell you some of the backstory behind that. That full document that's from is, it's one of Google's top executives. I believe it's the vice president of advertising, who's comparing Google's business model to drug markets and cigarettes in terms of how lucrative it is. And that was a major moment in the fight for public access in the trial. Google and the Department of Justice were fighting over whether that document was going to be presented in open court. And this was just one of many, many such instances. Google pushed as much as it could to keep proceedings of sensitive, documents and evidence. They wanted them to be in closed door proceedings rather than open court. And in that moment, in the fight over that document, Google also took this opportunity to try to admonish the Department of Justice, because they had been publishing evidence shown in open court on a sort of digital portal on its website, which, to my understanding and from other people I spoke to, is fairly common practice for these kinds of cases. The judge got mad at the Department of Justice for not informing him that they'd been doing this, and he told them to take down all of the public evidence that was already being shown in open court. And that's when a Bloomberg reporter, Leah Nyland, actually stood up from the audience section and protested this decision, and said, this is important public access. It's public evidence. We would like to have a third-party representative from the press in the room if you're actually going to go forward with this. That was this kind of watershed moment when a lot of outside outlets started to kind of realize that, well, why aren't we hearing that much of what's coming out of this courtroom? There were a number of articles about how
I want people to understand the context of this, because this really is extraordinary. Because there's the judge had decided there would be no audio feed for this court. Now, why is that important? Because if there's an audio feed, you can be you can be anywhere in the country. Where was this? This took place in where?
DC District Court.
In DC. So you could be in New York. You could be in San Francisco. You could be a tech reporter. You could be an antitrust lawyer. It doesn't matter. You could be a reporter. You could literally report on the case from afar. Instead, everybody has to go, and there's a limited amount of resources to send people. But then on top of that, you have veteran reporters of antitrust cases. And there's really not that much of a beat for that as much anymore, because the last one was Microsoft, which we should say, very similar case in terms of default, but we can talk about that in a moment. And it really is sort of, I mean, I don't want to overhype this, but like a reporter gets up in the middle of a case. It's not like they're party to this case. They're just in basically the peanut gallery, right, saying there's something really going on here. And it's interesting because to me, it really provides insight is the judge is intimidated, it feels like, from the beginning by Google on some level, and just acquiesces. the DOJ, I think Matt Stoller is quoted in your piece saying the DOJ, they just want to win. And if they buck up against the judge could be predisposed to being, annoyed by the DOJ, and they feel like they can win because they have access to it and they can just make this case. But it's amazing how the judge is both intimidated by the defendant, and then when there is light shined on this dynamic in a dramatic fashion, and we've had people on, I think, reporting on how all of this stuff was being kept secret, and it doesn't make the same splash. But when this reporter stands up, then other reporters, particularly the New York Times, are sort of like almost embarrassed or / see like a thread they can pull, and the whole process starts going. Yeah. So she gets up there from Bloomberg and says, this is wrong. And then what happens?
Yeah. So there's this kind of arrangement, as you described, that is really led by Google. I mean, it became clear in the first couple of weeks that Google devised this strategy that was, we want to control the narrative coming out of this courtroom. And so we're going to try and just block as much information as possible and kind of just hope to sweep this under the rug. People will sort of tune out. We think that'll work in our favor. And, Judge Mehta in the early court proceedings had this quote when they're just figuring out procedural stuff. And he says, I'm slightly paraphrasing here, but not that much. He says, I'm just a mere trial judge. I don't understand how complicated technology markets work. So, I'm going to more or less defer to Google here. And that was kind of the, maybe like the original sin of the trial. He actually admits this later on. And as you said, the Department of Justice, they're trying to win the case. They don't want to be an irritant, really. They want to stay on the judge's good side. So there's this really kind of awkward complicity between the parties. Leah Nyland stands up. And at that point, I also should note that week, over half of the proceedings had been in closed court session. So the other thing that does for press access, it was kind of a boiling point, is what I'm saying. So you're a reporter and you're in DC. Okay, you've already overcome that obstacle. You show up. There's no trial list when you show up for that day in court. You don't know how much of it's going to be in open court. A lot of people just stop showing up. I mean, you don't have copy to turn into your editor by the end of the day. Most of the reporters are just kind of hanging out in the hallway, hoping to, see when they can get back into the court, or, put a mic in, some lawyer's face who's coming out of this closed court session. So that moment kind of with Leah Nyland kind of breaks this spell, and the judge, sort of eases off. And for the rest of the court, for the rest of the trial, I mean, it's all in open court. That was one actual, kind of concrete victory. But there's this other problem, which is that Google wants to have this review process for evidence that's already been shown in open court for the posting of those documents. And the judge, kind of acquiesces, allows for there to be some kind of streamlined process for both parties, DOJ and Google, to decide on this. But Google kind of has a veto. And the delays to all that evidence and transcripts getting out is what then gets the New York Times involved and files this motion to protest the public access in the trial.
What I think people have to understand, and I'm sure there might be a different type of case that this would apply to, there more so, but it's off the top of my head. I can't think about it. Antitrust is so, there is a real sort of like policy decision that antitrust represents that is very different from almost any other type of like sort of like major regulatory function of the government, right? Because we had in this country since Robert Bork, the Borkian move, this is before he's trying to get on the Supreme Court, where the Reagan administration adopted a new concept of what antitrust was. And it was just a conceptual shift from a sort of like a antitrust as a device in which to increase democracy versus antitrust as a device to protect consumer welfare only. And no laws have changed. It is just that we have entered into an era where this administration happened to a point, not happened, but I think in large part we can see that we could trace it back to like Warren and Sanders, perhaps, particularly Warren, who was very invested in this, getting certain personnel into the DOJ, Cantor, one of those people, getting somebody into the FTC, Lena Khan, one of those people, who then basically adopt the old concept of antitrust. And this is an example of it being a sort of a political policy question, not just a strict legal one. And so that there's this sort of like room for a judge, if there's no pressure and no one's really scrutinizing, to just sort of defer to the defendant in this situation until all of a sudden there's all this scrutiny where somebody says, $26 billion. Are you kidding me? They're spending more money on this default thing than they are on development. They're spending more money on this than 10% of their revenue. That's an enormous figure. It's obviously incredibly important to them. And the judge can't sort of like go along to get along in this situation. It creates a lot of pressure. And that's what was so hugely important about what the reporters did in this instance.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. It's gonna make his decision certainly a lot harder, and we're gonna have quite some time to find out, because unlike the case that I opened this up by explaining, the Play Store case, which was a jury trial, we immediately got the result. We're not going to know the judge's decision until May. It's been pushed back many months.
And is all the evidence has been provided at this point? Is that it? The case is over? Closing arguments are done?
Well, yeah, both parties are, putting together some kind of, closing brief to hand to the judge. That's going to be many hundreds of pages, but it's just a summary of, everything we've heard in court already, more or less.
What is it incumbent upon the DOJ to provide a remedy for the judge, or is the judge just make a ruling? This is a violation of antitrust laws. They have used their monopolistic power to inhibit competition, and then we move into a different phase? Or does the DOJ who comes up with the remedy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question, and there was a decision that the Department of Justice made, and actually, they had to agree with Google on this basic framework. This trial was only about whether Google had violated the Antitrust Act. It completely bracketed off what the potential remedies will actually be, which is a very complicated question. And the Department of Justice, will have to sort of figure this out. But the first step is, of course, whether Google has actually, broken the law here.
It's fascinating, and it really, in many ways, mirrors the Microsoft antitrust, which was the last big one, right? Where you get a computer from Dell, and it just pops up. It's Microsoft browser, as opposed to back in the day, it could have been, I don't know, Mozilla or Netscape or the Duck one. I can't remember all the different ones that were out there.
DuckDuckGo.
Oh yeah.
Was it DuckDuckGo? Was the search, right? There was another one, a blue. There was all sorts of different ones, browsers at that time. Well, anything else we should know, Luke?
Well, I mean, I'll just add this to the point you just made. So, in fairness here, so Google's argument is just like, basically we have the best product. That's why they're big. They have a somewhat more sophisticated case that, there was Yahoo before us. We outcompeted them. And then there's, this whole generative AI thing in the future. This is just the nature of the market taking place. And the important thing about the precedent of Microsoft is there's actually a sort of hidden but much longer legacy of tech companies that the government took action against and opened up space for new competitors, new innovations to happen. This started with IBM. It's the same with the Microsoft case, and we'll see what happens here with the Google case.
Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect. Really appreciate you coming on and walking us through it. It's a really sort of fascinating story with more drama than you would imagine. And I would think that reporter, I can't remember her name now again from Bloomberg, but is she like being feted by her fellow reporters? Like she should open up the dam waters.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she, hero for all the reporters who are struggling in the courtroom. Yeah.
There's a lot of muffin baskets, I would imagine, that she's getting right now. Appreciate your time, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Should we, what should we do? Should we go to the fun half, or should we do just a little bit more on,
It's up to you. It's up to you.
Let's do a little bit of this. I want to just talk about this because I found this just astonishing. The Biden administration, apparently Kirby was, chastising or was like concerned that the white phosphorus that they sent to Israel, which ostensibly is to illuminate the battlefield, was being used to burn the flesh off of people in the form of bombs. And we know that Israel has done this in the past.
White phosphorus burns so hotter than other flames, that it can go straight to the bone through your flesh. And it's also more difficult to put out. So it's a war crime.
And but don't worry, the U.S. has raised concern over it. Kirby's comments came after the Washington Post on Monday reported on earlier claims from Amnesty International that Israel illegally deployed white phosphorus between October 10th and 16th in civilian areas of southern Lebanon and along the border with Israel. The Post said that in its own investigation, its journalists found remnants of artillery rounds fired into Deira, Lebanon, near the border of Israel, which residents said destroyed homes and injured people in the region, leaving at least 3 people hospitalized. The shells remains match those used by U.S. military. This is according to the Post, and conversation with residents in the area indicate they targeted an area where civilians were likely to be hurt. Kirby said white phosphorus can have a legitimate military utility in terms of illumination. Obviously, anytime that we provide items like white phosphorus to another military, it is with the full expectation it'll be used in keeping with those legitimate purposes and keeping within the law of armed conflict.
Did he elaborate on the legitimate purposes?
Obviously. Well, tomorrow we're going to have a guest on to talk about some of these weapons shipments that are being sent to Israel around sort of like doing runarounds, end arounds, emergency requirements, et cetera, et cetera.
Incidentally, it's produced in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, that white phosphorus. I'll try to find the company name.
And nevertheless, this is, we've seen Anthony Blinken talk about, starting in early November and then again in early December. We're really concerned about how Israel is targeting civilians. The concern apparently can just roll on, and there's no reason to believe that it won't be the same for white phosphorus. Here is Joe Biden last night. And again, I don't know how helpful it is to sort of like, to guess, is this just sort of Joe Biden have some type of like deep ideological commitment to this, or do they have some type of secret poll that tells them that they should be doing this or whatnot? You don't necessarily need to know these things to find comments like this and U.S. actions to be reprehensible. This is in the wake of the U.S. vetoing a UN resolution to call for a ceasefire. Here he is at the Hanukkah celebration in the White House. Again, Hanukkah celebrating the guerrilla warfare. We don't know. I mean, this happened, over 2,000 years ago. We don't know if you could call it terrorism. Maybe all of their targets that the Maccabees fought were military. Maybe some of them were civilian. We don't know. But we do know that they were a guerrilla warfare attacking the occupiers in Jerusalem at that time at the site of the first temple.
You could call that an uprising, right?
It was a bit of an uprising.
Bit of an intifada.
It was like yes, you could use that term. It was and they were being occupied, and they were there was no electricity at that time, and it was not as easy to control water, but they were not given access to the temple. And anyways, the celebration of Hanukkah, I just thought I would mention the story of Hanukkah, apropos of nothing. And this is what Joe Biden said at that celebration.
The Talmud says what comes from the heart goes to the heart. That's the warmth and kinship I feel so deeply with the Jewish community. I got in trouble, got criticized very badly by the southern part of my state and some of the southern parts of the country when 35 years ago I said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Hanukkah is a timeless story of miracles. Think about it. You know, from the Maccabees defeating one of the history's most powerful empires on an oil lasting 8 days was a miracle all by itself. A flame of faith that endures from tragedy to persecution to survival and to hope. That's what it survives to, survival and hope. But we know this year's Hanukkah is different. It's been 65 years since the deadliest day of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 65 years. Most of you,
Days.
and I got to meet with 5 survivors downstairs. That's why we're a little bit late. 5 survivors in each of the camps. I taken all my children when they turned 14 years of age. My 3 children who lived and my 5 grandchildren when they're 14 years old. I put them on a plane. I take them to Dachau because I want them to see. I want them to spend the day there and see. You can't pretend you don't know. Silence is complicity. Most of you know someone directly or indirectly, a family, a friend, is stolen from you, or wounded, traumatized, or called up in the reserves.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to say, as you hear this, it is so offensive to me to use the Holocaust as a justification for the killing of thousands upon thousands of civilians. I mean, it is... it's sort of, I'm shocked to invoke Dachau as in the context of justifying the killing of civilians. It's just, it's shocking. It's just shocking to me.
Well, he would say that he's expressed concern. So he's not justifying the killing of civilians. But in actuality, obviously, that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing.
Let's just continue to listen. I'll also remind you, you don't have to be a Zionist if you're a Jew.
But it's at least clarifying that he calls himself one.
Yeah.
And what he was trying to say earlier was that it's been 65 days since the worst attack on Jews since the 75 years ago from the Holocaust. Again, that's relevant because... we're 75 years out from the Holocaust, and that attack happened in Israel, where people are in bomb shelters on a regular basis. And it's relevant only because of where he's going with this. Go ahead.
Friend is stolen from you, or wounded, traumatized, or called up in the reserves in this last attack in Israel. As I said after the attack, my commitment to the safety of the Jewish people and the security of Israel and its right to exist as an independent Jewish state is unshakable. Folks, were there no Israel, there wouldn't be a Jew in the world who was safe. Were there no Israel. Ultimate guarantee. And I make no bones about it. I've had my differences with some Israeli leadership.
All right, I don't need to hear any more because I found that statement just the most incredibly... it's incredibly offensive. I want to know what's going to happen in America if there were no Israel. This is just absurd. It's absurd propaganda. It's just not the case. One of the least safe places in the world right now to be a Jew is to be in Israel. And that's not simply a function because Israel was founded there, it is because of the policies that they have pursued for the last 75 years, where there has been a relentless dispossession of people's property. There has been intermittent attacks. You can say that it's completely justified, which I would disagree with, but you can't, by any estimation, regardless of what your perspective is, say that Israel has somehow made Jews safer.
No, I mean, Israel is literally fomenting attacks on Jews domestically with regards to, like, those Brown students arrested. I'm seeing a lot of Jews arrested protesting what Israel's doing, and in part because Israel and pro-Israel lobbyists.
I don't accept the premise that necessarily that Israel's actions in and of itself foment anti-Semitism.
I don't mean,
but what does foment anti-Semitism is this constant equation with Israeli policies with being Jewish. That is what is problematic.
I'm not saying anti-Semitism. I just mean suppressing Jewish speech, like on campus and things like that.
Yes, but I think like the idea that somehow that no Jew would be safe were it not for Israel. This is absurd. This is just absurd. It's offensive.
Yeah, I mean, and it's Zionism, that it's nationalism in all of its forms that makes all of us unsafe. Because when Biden says there that he believes in an independent Jewish state, what he means is an ethno-state. I want the Jews and the Israelis that live in Israel right now to be able to live there because they live there. But I also want the Palestinian people who live there to be able to live there. And you cannot reconcile a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy with one of Zionism. And so it becomes an inherently exclusionary ideology that makes the Israelis less safe, if that's the only objective, even if you don't care about the Palestinian people whatsoever. An exclusionary nationalist ideology makes people less safe in Israel, and the amount that we've militarized that society as well. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, we can't look into the heart and mind of Biden, obviously, but who is he listening to that's saying that Jews cannot be safe?
Netanyahu.
Without Israel, and there you go.
Yeah, it's just
so he's listening to a far-right demagogue. And,
I'm so old that I remember 18 months ago where the idea that, you could, any type of like dual loyalty or equation of Jews, American Jews, with the interests of Israel was considered anti-Semitic. I mean, honestly, it's just the idea that we don't have like I hope we get a spokesperson from like the Holocaust Remembrance Museum to say like no, that's not what you're supposed to use. You're not supposed to be citing the Holocaust as a mechanism in which to justify the onslaught that we're seeing in Gaza. That's not the spirit of things. And the idea that Joe Biden is out there telling me like that in some way, if it wasn't for Israel, I wouldn't be safe. Really?
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, it's just it's incredible the how they're twisting themselves into these type of knots to justify their foreign policy.
Where are Jews safer right now? I mean, right here in the United States. We have thriving Jewish communities here, and that doesn't mean that they don't face anti-Semitism. Of course they do. Of course many Jewish communities face anti-Semitism here. But in terms of the body count, where are Jews safer? It's here in the United States, where we have a multiracial, multi-ethnic society, which is not exclusionary. I mean, we have our problems, obviously, but we're not defining the nation based on an ethnicity or a religion. Because when you do that, you put up walls, you create apartheid systems. You say, well, is this kind of thought a little bit too close to the other side? You divide people. And so that is what is completely counterfactual about what Biden is saying there. Zionism and an exclusionary state doesn't make anyone safer, let alone Jews.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help the show survive and thrive, you get other stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
Jointhemajorityreport.com. Really could use your support if you listen to the show on a regular basis, or even a semi-regular basis. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee by the Majority Report blend, as well as other really delicious blends of coffee. Makes for a great gift. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off of that. Don't forget, it is Christmas time. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. Hanukkah is just about over when we celebrate the overthrowing of an occupier. It's just about over. But a late Hanukkah gift is also welcome if it's a Majority Report merch. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. Don't forget the AM Quickie, amquickie.com. Emma, ESVN.
We went into the Mahomes meltdown, how the entire Chiefs organization was completely wrong about that Kadarius Toney call. We also spoke about Justin Herbert's injury, the Ravens winning in that thriller, the Cowboys cementing themselves as one of the elite teams in the NFL, and we went into the labor issues surrounding turf fields. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, tonight on Left Reckoning, we've got Aina Muhammad at Nice Mangoes on to talk about her run-ins years ago with Sam Harris, because she is an ex-Muslim who is not anti-woke, for instance. And we also talked about Ayan Hirsi Ali going from ex-Muslim to now a Christian, because we need to join with the Christians to fight to save the West. So that's tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to the postgame.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
I don't even know what that was a reference.
No,
Buy
remember
my merchandise.
That's what. Sorry, we were talking about Kamala a little bit, but remember in the debate, that's what she said to Biden about the busing.
Oh.
That little girl was
And also,
May.
what would you have done different as you were that little girl? And I was like, absolutely nothing. But buy my merchandise and please join my email list.
And here's that whole phrase and T-shirts immediately available after the debate with that little girl was me on it.
The follow-up. She was like, you'd have to consult the history on that one.
Yeah. Was that the same debate that Tulsi Gabbard decided my entire mission is going to be just to go after Kamala Harris?
Let's play this clip. Let's start off with number 3. Because we played one from Climate Defiance yesterday, right? Where what's that? Yes, but yesterday they were where was that again? Where is that located?
In New York City.
They were in New York City for the
chemical marketers,
right? Oh yeah, they're honoring the CEO of Exxon.
Yeah.
And yesterday. They were in, I guess that was over the weekend. Yesterday, they were in my hometown of Worcester, Massachusetts.
Woo!
Richie Neal, I don't know what he was doing. He's from out west. By out west, I mean like the Springfield area.
He was giving like a congressional update to the New England Council.
Okay, so he's giving a congressional update to the New England Council and coming in from out west, like on Route 90, heading all the way from Springfield, almost an hour away. Coming into our territory in Worcester, and I must say, Jim McGovern, great congressman. Richie Neal, not such a great congressman. Nope. And here is him giving his New England Council event speech, or trying to, and there's some Worcester elders who don't appreciate it. Here we go.
Hey, get your hands off me! Don't touch me! You continue to take millions from corporate facts. Will you stop taking donations from fossil fuel companies?
Okay. I paid for the breakfast. You didn't.
No new oil. Keep the carbon in the soil.
We need you to be a leader for ordinary people, and not for corporations and big banks, not for fossil fuel companies.
Right now. This is ridiculous. Where's the urgency, though? We're out of time. Where's the Richie Neal? We need a Green New Deal. Hey, Richie Neal. We need a Green New Deal. Hey, Richie Neal. We need a Green New Deal.
Will you stop taking money from fossil fuel companies? Yes or no? Paid for by corporate PACs. Why should we believe what you're saying? When your companies are on the hook for it, and you're not campaigning against a progressive challenger.
No new gas, no new oil. Keep the carbon in the soil. No new gas, no new oil. Keep the carbon in.
I love that guy. It's like, I paid for this breakfast. You didn't.
Yeah, right.
That should be like the old Democrat mantra. It's like, I paid for this breakfast.
I love
You
that
didn't.
when, and there was like the cop yesterday when he's like, the protester's like, we're compliant. He's like, yeah, but after you disrupted the meeting. It's like,
You disrupted the gala.
Yes.
Right.
You figured it out. Good for those folks. Climate Defiance. I don't know if that's the specific Worcester chapter, but
I appreciate the way they're picking their targets. It's great to be in these fancy rooms in disrupting, really powerful people.
Totally. Totally. I think it's important. cannot celebrate these things.
And very delicious that it's Richie Neal as well.
And that you can rhyme his name with the Green New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the House is getting prepared to go forward with impeachment. You're already starting to hear some Republican senators are like, oh, God, this is going to be embarrassing. And
It already is.
It is embarrassing. But this is the dilemma that the Republican Party has, is that, there are, I don't know, 5 or 6 now senators, maybe 8, that have to run in states that aren't deep, deep red. And it's embarrassing, the Republicans in the House. It's also embarrassing for, some of the House delegates in states that aren't as deep red. There's New York Republicans. And remember, they only have now, what, is it like a 2-seat majority? Or will shortly be a 3-seat majority, I should say. So there's a lot of people on the precipice. And the more that Republican senators, even if it's a couple, come out and poo-poo this thing even before it gets to the Senate, that they don't even feel obligated, that they actually think it's a political liability to pretend that there's even like an argument for impeachment in this instance, the more it puts pressure on those Republican lawmakers from New York, Republican lawmakers from California, those 18 that were elected in Joe Biden districts. And it doesn't help their case that the guy essentially in charge of leading the sort of like impeachment to the water, as it were, before it starts to drink, James Comer, seems completely inept. It's as if, like, honestly, it's like every time we see an interview with this guy, it's like, did someone just wake you up from a nap and say, get on television, and you had no time to prepare? Here is James Comer. He's got his James Comer logo backdrop, so you must know he's going to be on TV. But he doesn't seem to have the answers prepared, so much so that even Jake Tapper, of all people, is like,
Or is the problem that he does have the answers? Right?
The next question is, can you name one piece of evidence or testimony that directly and credibly connects President Biden to any of this proven misconduct? Proven.
I could name 2.
Okay.
First of all, we believe President Biden committed a quid pro quo when he leveraged $1 billion of U.S. taxpayer money in Ukraine in exchange for firing the prosecutor, Shokin, who was investigating Burisma, the company that Hunter Biden just got charged with receiving substantial sums of money and not paying taxes. We believe that Joe Biden was directly involved in the termination. We believe this, Jake, because he admitted it on tape. That's one crime.
The entire. We'll get to the second in a second, okay. But just for our viewers' awareness, the entire Western world wanted Shokin fired.
Okay, can you pause it for a sec? Because this is entirely different. They're trying. This whole thing, this impeachment stuff, is retaliation for the Democrats impeaching Trump twice, right? And those were for first the Ukraine thing, which I'll get to in a second, but 2, obviously, the January 6th stuff. But the difference between what Biden did and what Trump did is that Trump tried to essentially get dirt and withheld aid in order to get dirt on his political opponent, Biden, for purposes outside of what the government's role was. What Biden was doing in his capacity as vice president at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, was basically stated and confirmed U.S. policy. He was literally just doing his job. That might be in part why he admitted it on camera.
Yeah, he admitted it on camera as, it wasn't that he admitted it on camera. His job was to go on camera. He was sent by the U.S. government to go on camera and say this out loud. Because this is what the policy was, the stated U.S. policy, whereas the stated U.S. policy, statutory obligation, was to give this money to Ukraine for, and people can argue whether they should have or shouldn't, but it doesn't, that's irrelevant. Give this money to Ukraine for aid, and Trump was like, I may not let it go.
Right,
if you don't
but you got to
give me
do
this
something
stuff."
for me.
Yes, and Jake Tapper's about to make at least the former point
okay.
that like this was public policy, not just U.S. public policy, but it was literally Western Europe because they felt that Shokin was corrupt, and Ukraine has a corruption problem, and it was a lot worse, but it still remains even. But go ahead.
We'll get to the second in a second, but just for our viewers' awareness, the entire Western world wanted Shokin fired. Like, it wasn't just President Biden. The entire Western world, the European Union,
He's laughing at him.
The G8, there were a lot of people, including Republican members of the House and the Senate, who wanted Shokin fired. It wasn't just like Vice President Biden, conspiring with himself. So, okay, what's the second one you wanted to talk about?
Well, the second one clearly with the Foreign Agents Registration Act. That's why the judge in Delaware kicked out the sweetheart plea deal that Weiss originally negotiated. Remember, just a few months ago, Weiss was trying to negotiate a deal that would have given Hunter Biden blanket immunity. He wouldn't have had to been charged with any serious crime.
Right.
So the Foreign Agents Registration Act is the most obvious. And who is he lobbying on behalf of? I mean, he was lobbying on behalf of our enemies around the world. Who was he lobbying? He was lobbying his father.
Right, but we don't have any evidence that he carried any. I don't know what evidence there might be about Hunter Biden and the Foreign Agents Registration Act. You might be right about that. I just don't know what then Vice President Biden might have done, and especially in those 4 years where he was not doing anything, he wasn't vice president or president. But let's move on to some other questions, because you've called Hunter Biden to testify next week before your committee, December 13th. You've said if he does not appear, you will hold him in contempt of Congress. Hunter Biden has said, and his lawyers, that he's willing to testify publicly. He just doesn't want to do it behind closed doors. He's afraid Republicans will leak his remarks and they'll put them out of context. Why not just allow his appearance to be public? I have to say, just as a journalist, I'm really, as you just generally know, I like the transparency. Ask him anything you want. I would like to see it.
Jake, put our investigation, put my investigation next to Adam Schiff's, and you tell me who's been more transparent. Every single bit of evidence that we talk about, we cite. We publish 4 bank memorandums, which show.
All right, what are we doing on the rest of this? Do we, or is there anything else after that? In the second instance, the idea that that there is no evidence that Hunter Biden was lobbying Joe Biden to do anything.
Yeah.
Other than to loan him money to buy a car or to give him money so that he could go and spend it on God knows what.
And the evidence they present that he was influence peddling is that he would sometimes call his dad, and his dad would pick up, and he would do it in front of other big shots, right?
And talk about the weather is what the testimony was.
But that was the closed door testimony too.
The closed door testimony.
Their
we didn't
star
find
witness.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so interesting that like all of these kind of major players, including the central connection for the Chinese Communist Party and Biden and Ukraine and Biden, Hunter, his son, is like not going to be, they don't want him front and center if they think this is as explosive, nor did they want his top associate, the person who was supposedly working on this with Hunter. They didn't want that in public either.
It's fascinating. They are just playing to a very, very narrow audience. Well, not very, very narrow. Probably at least 45% of the audience.
There is one other funny part if you want to watch it.
Let's just see.
More incredulity from Tapper.
It's closed door deposition.
But that was an investigation. That wasn't an investigation of Ivanka Trump. That was a separate investigation. But in any case, I guess my other question is just, isn't something better than nothing? Why not just jump at the opportunity to grill Hunter Biden on national television? Here's your chance. You know, you're the dog that caught the bus. Here it is.
This isn't about politics. It's not about theater. My job, I know the media, and I like you, Jake. I know the media would like to have a big public show, and that would be very entertaining. But my job is not to entertain.
Show. Yes, it's me.
Right. But my job is not to entertain you all. My job is to get the truth. When you have
That's pretty good.
Which is why I want to hide all of this information from the press. My job is not to get to the truth.
Yes, it's me.
It's just sort of amazing that Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper is almost purposely laughing in front of his face.
Yeah.
He's not. It's not like he can't contain himself. It's like, I'm going to laugh in his face.
Yeah.
Because this is a joke. And this is relevant because I think you would expect people to laugh on MSNBC, although maybe they wouldn't as a way of, I don't know. But my point being that CNN is presumably sort of like the centrist network, as it were. And if James Comer can't go anywhere except for Fox News or News Nation or WorldNet Daily or America One or whatever all of those other, sort of right-leaning outlets are, without getting laughed at, they've got a real problem. They've got a real problem because it will, without a doubt, be a hassle for the Biden White House. Undoubtedly. It soaks up a bunch of resources. But it's arguably, I think, the best thing that could happen to them electorally. And maybe too for the Democrats in the House. It will certainly help 80%, 90% of the Republicans in the House. But this entire country and all of electoral and political control is now a function of the 10%.
Yeah.
Less, probably. I don't know. I can't do the numbers. 18 seats in out of 435. That's 20. That's 5%.
And it's also notable that the way Comer and Jim Jordan have talked about this, where they've been like, I would vote to impeach him tomorrow. Whereas guys like Don Bacon, Republican in Nebraska, who has changed his mind on voting for the impeachment inquiry, it's very clear that he's like, I'm voting for the inquiry because they're stonewalling us and we need more info. I am not voting to impeach Joe Biden.
Right.
I'm voting for the inquiry.
Well, it'll be interesting too with those frontline Republicans in those 16 districts that Biden won. What they're going to do in terms of if they actually bring this forward and voting for impeachment, their margins are even slimmer if they're moving forward with this, with Kevin McCarthy leaving in a few months and George Santos.
Santos gone, then Bill Johnson in Ohio leaves to take a university position. That's 3 down.
It would be hilarious if it failed.
Let's move from the laughable exercise of impeaching Joe Biden to the laughable exercise of trying to defend Donald Trump's January 6th stuff. Ron Johnson, again, this guy is, in many respects, and I can understand why he'd be a little bit resentful, he had sole position of the title of the stupidest person in Congress. And as a senator, that's pretty impressive. And then, of course, Tommy Tuberville came along and ripped it away from him. Here he is on CNN with Caitlin Collins. And again, it's as if they didn't know they were going to be on TV. And it's not like Ron Johnson hasn't been going around saying this. Caitlin Collins is a former Daily Wire.
Daily Caller.
Daily Caller writer, right?
Culture writer, yeah.
And here she is, I guess, just surprising Ron Johnson with just the most obvious of questions.
To go, Senator, I do want to ask about this. Obviously, it's your home state. 10 Republicans who signed paperwork falsely claiming that Trump won there in the 2020 election have now agreed to withdraw that paperwork, acknowledge that Joe Biden did win the election, and also agree to not serve as an elector in the 2024 election or in any election where Trump is on the ballot. But there is one person who still serves, Robert Spindell, in a state agency that is responsible for administering elections and certifying the results. Do you think that he should resign from that, given the role he played in the fake elector scheme?
No, again, there was an active court case. There are all kinds of irregularities in Wisconsin in the 2020 election. And in order to make sure that the case just wasn't determined to be moot, they had to have an alternate slate of electors, just like Democrats have done repeatedly in all kinds of different states. There was nothing untoward about what they did. There was nothing illegal about what they did. They were just an alternate slate of electors.
They were going to court. They had $2.4 million on the line in damages if they lost this case at trial. That's why
I know
they
they've been harassed.
But to say, you're saying that they
I
did
realize
nothing
Democrats
wrong?
have used the civil courts to harass these poor individuals. It's unfortunate. It's a travesty. But that's what Democrats do. They view politics as a blood sport. It was unfortunate. These folks did nothing different than what many Democrats have done in many states
They certainly
throughout our
did,
history.
Senator. I mean, there were multiple slates of fake electors, including in your home state. They're acknowledging that they were playing a role in trying to improperly overturn the election. That's what they said.
They got themselves out of a nuisance lawsuit. They agreed to settle a nuisance lawsuit that never should have been brought.
So you think it's
It was
fine
a
that
harassment
someone
lawsuit. It was a travesty of justice.
you think it's fine that someone who tried to overturn a legitimate election is still on a board
Democrat
that
electors
helps
have done that
certifies-
repeatedly. Democrats have done the same thing.
In
Republicans never
Wisconsin,
tried
there's
to
been
criminalize it.
fake slates of electors.
No, it's happened in different states. I
Which
didn't
ones,
come
sir?
prepared to give you the exact states, but it's happened. It's happened repeatedly. It has happened repeatedly. Just go check the books.
Which books?
I mean, there have been alternate slates of electors by Democrat electors in our history. Again, this wasn't what this interview was going to be about. I'll come and I'll provide you the information, but I'm
Okay,
absolutely
I look
certain
forward
about
to
that.
I look forward to your office sending that information. We'll publish it if it's
We'll do that.
accurate. Senator Ron Johnson.
Okay, and she says goodbye. That was pretty
So I don't know
amazing.
why you're even asking the questions. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Yeah.
But I love how sort of confident he's like, it happens all the time.
Yeah,
Democrats
both
are fake
sides.
electors all the time. Oh, I wasn't prepared for the exact states.
Like, really? Name an instance in which there was a Democratic presidential candidate that had its supporters put forward fake electors and then also challenged the results of an election over and over and over again in dead-end lawsuits and had associates make claims that Hugo Chavez was from the dead, trying to overturn the election. Like, let's point us to that historical moment.
Incidentally, this is in the wake of a Republican who served as a fake elector for Donald Trump being appointed to the state's elections commission, which, I don't know. It's sort of like, well,
A little concerning.
It's a little concerning. Yeah.
That's what they're going to try to. We said this before. I mean,
Yep.
in the lead up to the 2024 election, there's going to be some sort of drive by the right to get their guys in as poll workers.
And the way they're arguing here is that they invoked a failed legal strategy as opposed to it being part of a plan to overturn an election. But I remind you that there are, we've got all of these, the supposed failed legal strategy was debunked almost in real time as essentially the sinister plot to overturn the election was taking place, whether that was in Georgia, whether it was in claiming that, a server in Germany had been used and that election companies were fraudulent. And I'll remind you, Fox News was in on this. They were doing their part. There was this storming of the Capitol. There's evidence of this being a plot all over the place.
It's a matter of public record, and yet, he feels comfortable just
Check the books.
denying. Check the books. That's all I got to say,
What
and I'm
books
out.
what books is a great response.
And his office will not be sending that information to CNN because it doesn't exist.
Folks, I'm turning the voicemail off. That means that the calls are on. 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920 is the number. I don't watch Colbert that much just because I don't watch late night TV. But if I did watch late night TV, I would probably watch Colbert. He's
Out of
always
all of
been,
them?
yeah, he's always been a favorite of mine. This guy has always been a very political person. I would not ever host Lynn Cheney. Is it Lynn Cheney? Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney or Lynn Cheney.
Lynn is her mother.
I wouldn't host either one of them.
Sam has flipped tails on that guess, that 50-50 guess, maybe like 30 times.
I literally asked Bradley this morning, is it Liz or Lynn? I can't, I know. There's some things I just don't want to remember.
Yeah.
And I would never have her as a guest. And, but I do think that there is value of Colbert here, having her as a guest on and trying to make the point that, like, you know, you never Trumpers, you're really like Trump, except for you're just not Trump. And that is a point that I think has managed to elide the consciousness of too many people who would vote against Trump.
I mean, that's on purpose by the Democrats, unfortunately, because they're an incompetent party, but they keep trying to draw distinctions between the Republican Party and the MAGA extremists, and it's completely counterproductive to their own interests.
Yeah. Here is Colbert trying to hold Liz Cheney to account for that, and, you know, good for him.
Yeah.
There are left-wing dictators. Yeah. And there are right-wing dictators. Yeah. There are communist and socialist dictators who go to any means and any amount of people have to die or be trampled in order to achieve whatever freedom for the proletariat. And then there are fascist dictators, right-wing dictators, who in the name of preserving some imagined status quo or some imagined past that needs to be returned to will go to any lengths, and anyone needs to be trampled or killed in order to achieve that. So I'm not saying that it is the purview of one party. Why do you think, though, for the first time in our nation's history, the Republican Party won that race and got the first fascist dictator who could possibly take office? I'm just curious if you've done any self-examination of your party's leadership over the last 20 years as to why he is not an aberration, but rather an avatar.
Pause it. I just want to remind you, youngins, if you look back 20 years ago, guess who was the vice president? Yeah. And many people considered that vice president to be sort of like running the show.
Did he overreach in his power and his authority in terms of his role as vice president?
Well, a lot of people say, you know, where did this unitary executive theory come from? Well, it came from a guy named Dick Cheney when he was chief of staff of Richard Nixon. Yeah. And then came on to be, then he led the vice presidential search committee for George W. Bush. And oddly enough, he found himself. Yeah. But be that as it may.
And also, I would just say people who are a bit more authoritarian in nature or who are far right, to use some of the framing of what Colbert says there, they tend to also kill a lot of people. And her father was instrumental in the illegal invasion and war in Iraq, which killed up to 1 million people by some counts. Yep.
100%. And here is Colbert basically saying, what about your dad? Without not so many words.
As to why he is not an aberration, but rather an avatar.
I think he's an aberration. I think really? I mean, I think what Donald Trump has done is, first of all, he tapped into a sense among a lot of people in this country that their voice isn't heard. But he then lied to them and he preyed on their patriotism and he told them, you know what, I'll speak for you.
But very specifically through things like
preyed on their patriotism.
Every Republican.
I just want to
Well, he said Colbert's about.
Oh, okay, really? All right, I'm sorry, but it's just it's patriotism more like bigotry.
That's exactly.
But he then lied to them and he preyed on their patriotism and he told them, you know what, I'll speak for you.
But very specifically through things like racism, like Mexicans are rapists, they're killers, they're here to get us.
That's patriotic.
That's a very racist ideology.
Absolutely, and
undermining of the media. That's a very fascist thing to do.
There's no question that he's using a fascist playbook.
Right.
But it's also true right now, if you want to talk about, for example, the
But pause just one
disgusting
second, just to dwell on like the notion of playbooks for a second. Like if I run like the Spurs playbook and my team has a real good success for it, it probably means the personnel was set up to run that playbook pretty well. I think like if Trump ran a playbook, a fascist playbook, why was the Republican Party so able to execute that playbook?
Listen, it was, we sat on this program in the summer of 2016 when he announced, or I should say the summer of 2015 when he announced this guy has a very good shot at winning the Republican primary. I will definitely concede that I did not think that he would win in the general election. But I was saying this guy's going to get on that stage with all the other Republicans and blow them off because the Republican Party had created essentially a suit, and it was perfectly tailored to someone like Donald Trump. And
her dad was the tailor.
Well, her dad was very much
bought the fabric.
Yeah,
he bought the fabric.
He's like
the tailor, all of it. And but guess where she's going to go with here? How is she going to respond to the idea that your party seemed to really respond to all of this racism? And well, of course, here she's going to go with, can anybody guess? Go.
Talk about, for example, the disgusting anti-Semitism that is on the rise across this country. The left has a huge problem with anti-Semitism and what we're seeing on our university campuses, for example, and the unwillingness to stand against it.
That's the use of never.
I would agree that anti-Semitism is a disease that runs across all cultural boundaries, not only in the United States, but across the world.
Right.
But what I mean by, say, undermining the media is undercutting, sort of like roughing up the referee was a project of the right for the last 20 years, or undermining public institutions. You say that people believe that our public institutions can take the punishment that Trump will give them, and that's why he's not as dangerous as he should be. But I mean, the Republican Party's mantra has been the government is the problem for so many years.
Yeah, but see, it's really important, in my view, that we not sort of slide into saying everything the Republicans have ever done, is somehow the same as what Donald Trump is doing.
I'm not saying everything. I'm saying those are breadcrumbs.
Yeah, but I think you and I are just not going to agree on that. I mean, I think it's.
I know we're not going to agree, but do you understand why I'm asking that question?
Yeah, but I think you should let me answer it.
Go ahead.
No, look, I think that when I stood in front of my colleagues, for example, when they kicked me out of leadership, I said to them, we cannot become the party of anti-Semitism and white supremacy and racism and bigotry. And if you look at the people and the symbolism that the people had who invaded the Capitol on January 6th, they had neo-Nazi insignia. The Confederate flag.
Right, pause. Listen, there's something called the Southern Strategy. There's something called LBJ saying we're going to lose the South for decades after the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. I mean, this is all complete revisionist history.
Where did Reagan launch his campaign?
In
Mississippi.
Yes, but where specifically just by the Neshoba County fair, where you had civil rights workers, 3 civil rights workers killed, but also launched it, we should say, in that general election on the idea of states' rights,
yep.
Which of course was not too subtle code. But just in case you forget, and I don't think that Colbert felt it appropriate to bring this up, here is the very reasonable, non-Trumpy Lynn or Liz Cheney. I can never remember. Liz Cheney. In 2019, before she started thinking like, maybe I need to.
I want to sell a book,
some distance,
which is what she's doing, by the way, on the Colbert Show.
Yeah, and that's also why she's floating that she's going to run for president. She's not going to run for president.
Oh yeah,
she's selling a book, and here she is on 2019. Just in case you, for even a second, want to glorify her or raise her stature, here's just how decrepit of a person she is.
Sure that every American understands what today's Democrat Party stands for with respect to babies. and with respect to the murder of babies. We have seen now in states across the country the introduction of legislation that would enable the killing of babies. This is not about abortion. This is about killing babies after they are born. And it is the face of pure evil. And you've seen the leadership of the Democrat Party here on the Hill remain silent while elected leaders, including the governor of Virginia, described in very cold clinical terms how he would, in fact, facilitate the murder of a baby that had already been born. And I want to say personally, as a mother, I'm the mother of 5 kids. I've delivered 5 babies. And the idea that we have to say today to mothers all across this country that we've got to describe what the Democrats are doing is really horrific. And
I can't even, it's so horrific. I can't even listen to how she has to struggle through talking about how Democrats want to legalize the killing of babies. I mean, because at first it starts like, when they're like 6 months old and 1 year old. And then all of a sudden you're just killing babies up and through their toddlers and then into their teens.
Yeah. I've got a baby killing
all
appointment
the
after
laws
this.
that have been passed, which legalize murder.
Yep. Oh, I'm feminist now. I'm going to kill my first grader so I can live a feminist life. It happens all the time because the Democrats like it.
I mean, she is just like honestly
useless.
And she has a constituency of 0. She literally could not get elected to the House from Wyoming, where her father, the former vice president, was from. I mean, give me a break.
I mean, how long?
Like, how few people can you represent?
Well, I mean, she's going to represent, I would say, most likely an audience when she gets some sort of cable gig on MSNBC, because it seems to me that as they oust real progressives like Mehdi Hassan, their priority is getting a bunch of former Republicans to come on and be as right-wing as possible. Nicole Wallace, Joe Scarborough,
Michael Steele.
Michael Steele is one of the guys in the panel show.
She's up next. I
guarantee is replacing Mehdi's time slot.
I would not be. Michael Steele.
And it's like Michael Steele, Alicia Menendez, and another person, if I'm not mistaken.
So like the literal former head of the Republican Party is going to have a host on MSNBC.
Former RNC chair, yeah.
Okay.
I also just love in that clip how this is obviously any sort of break with Trump, where Liz Cheney is the 4th in line in the GOP leadership. She's House conference chair at that point, and she's doing all of the things of like the Democrat Party. Like,
of course,
we don't say
she's doing
Democratic.
Frank. Yeah, no, she got Frank. Yeah, she's full Frank Luncified. She's doing the exact same thing. She didn't have a word to say until like 16 months out. She's like, oh, maybe I got a shot here, and then realized like she went too far out on the diving board and then had to jump. That's basically what happened. That is the story of Lynn Cheney, whatever her name is. And that's also going to be a name of her MSNBC show. The Lynn's Show.
Well, I mean...
I don't even know my own name.
Lynn's.
And
just to make it easier for you.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that can be your suggestion to our MSNBC overlords when you have your weekly meeting with them. Yeah.
Weekly? I'm going to see him in 15 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Calling from an 817 area code. Folks, I'm just warning you right now, we don't have much time for calls, so you got to be quick.
Howdy, is that me?
Yep. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from North Texas.
And in North Texas, what's your name?
My name's Mason, and I've hopefully just got kind of some good news for folks out there. My mother-in-law got pretty roped into that Moms for Liberty group. And so she got like way more involved in public schools to like, really see what they were teaching our kids and stuff. And she really fell off kind of before this most recent like slate of elections that they lost a lot of. And I think it's really because once she got more in there, she saw what a lot of like progressives say about like conservative politics, that when people see that cruelty is the point behind all of these policies, they don't want to engage with that anymore. She also really kind of fell off like the DeSantis campaign, I think, for the same reasons. And so, just some good news that at least some people up here in Texas seem to be seeing through it a little bit. It's disappointing that Biden and the Democrats seem to not be able to capitalize on that and show that compassion is a better platform. But yeah, I guess all hope may not be lost for everyone out there.
Well, appreciate the call, Mason.
Thank y'all. Left is best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just heard from. I'm trying to make a Mason Dixon line, but I can't make it. Calling from a 650 Dixie line. I mean, I was just working on it. 650. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is the Flower Bro from San Francisco.
The what, bro?
Flower Bro.
Flower Bro
From San Francisco. What's on your mind?
I'll keep it real quick. I did want to ask you guys if you've brought up Party of Socialism and Liberation. Claudia de la Cruz is their candidate. Put it on your radar, but I really just wanted to announce, just remind your listeners that there's 3 actions in the San Francisco Bay Area this week. Today at Meta HQ in Menlo Park, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Tomorrow at the SFUSD 555 Franklin in San Francisco, and Thursday at Google 1 Market Street, San Francisco. I believe that one's 4:30.
Is there a place that we can link to, which would give people that that information?
Yeah, probably pslweb.org and PSL National on Instagram at PSL National.
All right, we will put that. We will link to that in the podcast and YouTube description.
Hey, thanks, guys. Left is best.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, we got time for, I think, one more caller. Calling from a 689 area code. Well, we may have time for a couple more, but we got to get going early today, right? Because we got to record some stuff. 682 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Carlos from North Texas. Is it me?
North Texas. You're our second Texas caller of the day. What's your name?
Carlos Fuentes. Not the writer, it's just me.
What's that?
It's not the writer, just if you're wondering, the writer, Carlos Fuentes from Mexico. I'm not the writer, it's me.
Okay. All right. I'm not, I mean, I'm happy you called. It would have been maybe a little bit more exciting, but that's all right. Carlos, what's on your mind?
Oh, boy. I know this is old news, but pretty much not old, but I managed to watch the Lady Ballers movie.
Oh, my God.
Jeez. Oh, man. Why? What happened? Was this some type of bet that you lost, or what was going on?
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, I watched the movie for free because I downloaded it for free from some website that managed to have this file. Oh, thank you very much.
That's what it means to be a mighty man of valor.
I downloaded it for free.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got this. I don't even remember the link, but please don't tell those people from the Daily Wire. I don't want to get sued.
Don't worry. Your secret is safe with us.
I watched Oppenheimer on Twitter last night, so.
I mean, if you send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com, we will make sure not to include your name when we post that link. Well, maybe we wouldn't even post it.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
I watched the movie, and honestly, I didn't get offended at all.
Oh.
Like, if I was a conservative and I watched the movie and I tried to see all of this, is pretty much all the talking points that these people has been spewing for years. And honestly, as a person who's pretty much been going full communist, even for me who lives in the state of Texas, I didn't even make me laugh at all. Like, I know it wasn't offensive at all. It was just, I mean, Ben Shapiro trying to swear, even though his swears were like, I don't know, censored. That was kind of adorable and kind of pathetic.
They censored his swears?
Yes.
What do you mean?
I was
censored his swears. Like they maybe you saw a copy that was supposed to go on TV.
It's TV-14. They didn't even make it rated R. Wait, also, it wasn't MPA reviewed, I guess. It's
No,
TV-14,
of course not.
But yeah,
they're just putting their own thing on there.
How much? Why couldn't they get the MPAA to review it?
Because it's not going to be released in theaters.
Yeah. They don't have
It's
money
not
to
going to
do
go
that?
on a streaming channel yet. Maybe they might ultimately do it, but who's going to buy that?
I watched some of R.M. Brown over on his channel did a longer recap of it and played some of the extended clips, and like the conservatism in it is just very preachy. It's like a dad, like Jeremy Boring talking to his daughter, and then like says something about communism and the Berlin Wall, but it's like very like, yeah, it's and if it's TV-14, that like you say, I'm not surprised that they're censoring stuff. So like, I mean, PG-13 rated comedies aren't good.
I mean, I watched it, but that was pretty much Ben Shapiro. I don't know why. Probably he has an objection. I heard him swear at Real Time with Bill Maher, but at the I don't even know what
they have a
created this.
family. They maybe Daily Wire is very family. They want it to be a family fun movie, and that could be it. But and it could be. Listen, it wouldn't surprise me if it was really made for 10-year-olds. And or for people with that type of mentality. But Carlos, really appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.
Sorry you had to do that. Sorry you had to watch that. Oh, this is an interesting story. Let's pop this up. If you see if you can get you remember Hannah Giles? She was when Project Veritas did their original sort of like prank. And essentially, because the Democrats were such cowards, ended up getting ACORN, a community organizing group across the country that would help low-income people, both doing things like registering to vote and navigating different public services. It got them defunded by the U.S. government. I believe that she was part of this, right? Was it ACORN that she was? She was.
From this in the Daily Beast in 2009, O'Keefe and Giles, then a journalism student, teamed up to surreptitiously record members of the National Community Organizing Group.
Right, and got ACORN shut down. That was basically their peak Project Veritas work. She was named the new CEO of Project Veritas in June, to great fanfare. I'm trying to think what else she had done. She had, I don't know if I have what she had been doing all that time. She had left Project Veritas, and now she just went on Twitter yesterday. You remember that James O'Keefe was found to be something was going on, and the board wanted him gone. Now, of course. He was very mad about that, and he's launched his own project, James O'Keefe. I haven't heard much about it since then, but she just tweeted out, "I am stepping down from all roles with Project Veritas and Project Veritas action effective immediately." She is racing out the door, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Though I had high hopes when I joined the organizations, I stepped into an salvageable mess, one wrought with strong evidence of past illegality. Whoopsie. And past financial improprieties. Why am I having trouble pronouncing things? Once such evidence was discovered, I brought the information to the appropriate law enforcement agencies.
Wow.
Whoa.
So it says from the website of Veritas, after the ACORN investigation, Giles pursued a career as a business leader and founded the American Phoenix Foundation to train hundreds of young journalists in investigative journalism. She also launched a community transformation consulting firm, C3 Strategies, which grew to over 450 employees.
Wow. And she left that for Project Veritas?
Go back to the old.
And then it took her 6 months to come across strong evidence of past illegality and past financial improprieties. I wonder if it was just like all of it was in one folder. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe she's going along. She's like month 2, month 3, month 4. It was in June she was hired for this, right? So that's 6 months. So you go along, month 2, month 3, month 4. No, it doesn't seem to be any past illegality or any past financial improprieties. Month 5, and somewhere around month 6, you pick up what's this folder? Ooh, it's labeled. Oh, that's weird. It's labeled past illegality and past financial impropriety.
Do not open.
I'm going to look into this. God, I've got to give this to the proper legal authorities. And then I'm right out the door.
I like to wait 6 months before I open the urgent messages from my accountant.
Something sounds
Anxiety avoidance.
super fishy about
It's avoidance.
Something sounds very, very fishy.
So we're talking about Project Veritas, huh?
We're talking about Project Veritas.
There we go.
And now, presumably, she's not talking about past illegality over the past 6 months that she's been there. She's got to be talking about past illegality and past financial improprieties that existed prior to her tenure. Now, she doesn't say that in the tweet, but I mean, I don't expect someone at Project Veritas to necessarily have a very good specific sense of A, precise language, or B, the law, or in any way. But by saying past, I think she's suggesting it occurred before she got there.
Interesting.
But it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I wonder who's left. Has there been any official word from the board? Are they going to appoint a new CEO?
Maybe they'll
I'll
just
do
pick
it.
it for scrap. Oh, yeah.
People want. I got a little bit of time.
You're looking maybe for an extended vacation in the clink.
Yeah. I want some deferred compensation.
Well, it's interesting. This piece from Mediaite at least says they interviewed some former Veritas staffers as well. Bobby Hard, the former lead investigative reporter for Veritas, said Giles knew what she was walking into when she took over as CEO. She promised us everything and delivered next to nothing, he said. While PV may have
She knew we were corrupt.
Yeah. While PV may have been an unsalvageable mess, her skills as a leader are even less. She had no business being in that role from the beginning, and she knows it.
Hey, what happened? She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Wow. So
And James O'Keefe's attorney, Jeffrey Lichtman, rejected Giles's claims about why she resigned, saying, "My reaction to her statement is shock. She's either demented or a grifting liar. She told me repeatedly that a PV...
A grifting liar put in charge of that organization?
She told me repeatedly that a PV board member had forcefully told law enforcement that no such financial irregularities existed to PV during James's leadership. Now, after spending the millions left in the bank account, she changes her story, quits, and goes home."
Well, I wonder if she actually gave information to the appropriate law enforcement agencies. This is going to get interesting.
In the months since, the former staffer told Mediaite that the remaining employees have been busy liquidating the Mamaroneck office, selling supplies and equipment to empty the building.
Get a deal on a graphics card.
I was going to say, do they have all these sort of they must have a lot of
Old equipment?
Camera
GoPros.
GoPros, but also glasses with cameras and buttonhole
secret
cameras.
weird kind of secret aging
Peep
gadgets.
cameras,
yeah.
Folks, just a little business tip. When you go into the office for the first time, and you take that CEO job, either decide right then to open up the file that says past illegality, or just get rid of it and never look at it.
Kaylin Erickson, a former senior producer of Project Veritas, said the group's death has been months in the making. Project Veritas was fatally shot in February when James decided to walk away instead of face up to a couple management checks, allowing a misinformed audience to cannibalize it for social media clout. In August, Hannah put PV in a coma it will never wake up from when she fired the staff that actually did the work PV existed for. Now she's run
I
out
don't
of
think you're
money.
melodramatic at all.
Now she's run out of money the coma-induced company can pay her. She's cut and run, leaving PV as good as dead.
Well, I mean, if
She
they're
sounds like a hero.
I was going to say, if they're claiming she sucked all the money out of Project Veritas,
good for her.
I mean, that sounds like good work.
It's called a hostile. Well, I don't know what that's called, but it's something in business, I'm sure.
Bear hug. It's a bear hug.
It's almost like a leverage buyout, isn't it?
A little bit.
We're going to load it up with that, put it all in my pocket, and just bye-bye. But the law enforcement agency thing, like, that would be a pretty bold lie as you exit.
To say you did that and you didn't?
Yeah, like the reason why I'm leaving is not because I'm really bad at this, but the reason why I'm leaving is because I found past illegality and I gave that information to law enforcement.
Who would be the relevant law enforcement to go to in a situation?
Well, it's unclear what the past illegality was.
Right.
Because she's not just saying like she's saying past financial impropriety, but I would say probably like the DA. Right? I mean, if it was like some type of like embezzlement or something like this, you'd take it to the attorney general's office or maybe the DA. I don't know. Somewhere around there.
DA's like, we didn't hear from them.
Unless it was even more extensive. I mean,
well, because the Westchester County DA is investigating O'Keefe, so
there
I'd
you
have
go.
to imagine they probably.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Makes sense.
Okay, there you go.
The folder open and waiting.
All right, folks, that ends the phone call portion of our program. Apologies, but we've got to wrap up a little bit early. Doing a little bit of housekeeping around here. Not literal, but I'll take some IMs and then we'll go. We'll go leave you a couple of these for tomorrow. Is that all right?
Sure.
You're gone tomorrow?
No, I'm here tomorrow as well.
Tomorrow's Wednesday. Yeah.
Yep, there you go. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Well, let's just do this one more with
Okay.
JD Vance because this really I find incredibly obnoxious. The Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union in 1922. 14 years later, the Republican Party's platform called Social Security creeping socialism and saying that Social Security, which had just been passed the year prior, an abomination, and called for its cutting and essentially the program to be completely annihilated. Almost every single platform produced by Republicans since 1936 called for cuts, if not the complete rejection of Social Security, until the 2020 platform,
Yeah.
which was, we're just in favor of what Donald Trump wants.
And Trump had been publicly professing his desire to protect Social Security because he's a crowd surfer and he knows it's a very popular program.
Yeah, he also had professed protection for Medicare, and the Republicans tried to cut that.
You can't
and
trust
stopped.
it, but it's interesting that he recognized that.
Yes, I will also add that the chief impetus within the country to privatize Social Security so they get their hands on what is known as dumb money came from Wall Street back in 2005 when George W. Bush wanted to privatize Social Security. We're going to invest it in Wall Street. And of course, that is what they call dumb money, money that is sort of orphaned in some way and can be manipulated and used for things like fees and to prop up stocks. Now, I give you Republican JD Vance, former investment banker with who was it?
I don't know. Well, Yale
Who was it
graduate.
Wasn't he investment banker, JD Vance?
Yeah, buddies with.
Yeah, I think Teal.
Buddies with Peter Thiel, and it's interesting that he's
Finance
on
guy.
Rumble here. This
Yeah.
is a link to Rumble, and I would say, this is a Thiel-backed
partner.
media project.
Yeah, so Yale Law, then worked at Mithril Capital, Thiel's venture capital firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here is JD Vance on the War Room with Steve Bannon. Just wanted to give you all of those facts so you understand what's going on here.
Anybody walked the Senate through, because it's just not $61 billion. We're 113, 120 in.
Correct.
This 61's for this year. The point you made that's not made enough on mainstream media is that we're now in the situation of underwriting their pensions, underwriting the entire government. It's 61 now, but just like Afghanistan, it's another 61 after that, another 61 after that. Correct? We're going to be $500 billion in this thing in before Trump gets back to office.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be asked to rebuild their entire country. That's after funding another $200 billion in military conflict. There's $300 billion on top of that to rebuild the country. Then we got to pay for their pensioners. We're getting easily $500 billion in the hole for the Ukraine conflict by the time this is done. And Steve, at the very same time, you have people in this town saying we need to cut Social Security. There are people who would cut Social Security, throw our grandparents into poverty. Why? So that one of Zelensky's ministers can buy a bigger yacht? Kiss my ass, Steve. It's not happening.
What's going to happen?
So here he is. Let me just say one thing about Tough Guy. Aside from your feelings about whether we should continue to fund Ukraine or not, the payment for Zelensky's yacht is a lie. But the people who want to cut Social Security are otherwise known as Republicans in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
There are some Democrats, Joe Manchin, I think probably you could convince to cut Social Security. But the last vote taken on Social Security in the Senate was back when the Democrats voted in a non-binding resolution because they couldn't get the legislation passed through the House, was to increase Social Security. There is one party that has unequivocally supported Social Security and created Social Security, and it is not his party. And if you think that we could not spend a dime on Ukraine, we could have Ukraine, for whatever reason, send us $10 billion. And I can assure you, not a single person in the Republican Party would change their attitude towards the idea of cutting or expanding Social Security.
Yeah, when we had a budget surplus under Clinton, did the Republicans stop their ideological commitment to cutting Social Security?
Never.
No.
Never.
No.
Never.
Well, they use it as a chance to launch a war.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever. Just so you know. And
I also
I don't know why J.D. Vance is wearing eyeshadow.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Raccoon boy.
Yeah, and notice how it's only Ukraine funding that we're talking about here. And that whole $100+ billion package also includes money to Taiwan and to Israel, and you don't hear a peep about that.
Well, they have to
Republicans.
pretend like they're the Tim Pool anti-imperialists that don't know anything about Israel-Palestine, but maybe they'll look into it.
Yeah.
Colin from Washington says, might be surprised in advance, but we can have both increase Social Security and fund a new Marshall Plan.
It's a false zero-sum situation.
But it gives him an opportunity to pretend like he cares about Social Security. Let's read a couple IMs and then we should go. Didn't really make it early, did I? Stephen from Cambridge. I was part of the Climate Defiance crew at Richie Neal event yesterday. Your coverage and support means a lot. To answer Sam's question, this was actually at the Boston Harbor Hotel.
Oh, wow.
What?
The new, sorry, my bad. The New England Institute is based in Worcester, but it must have been an event in Boston.
Oh, I'm so disappointed.
Thank
It
you.
was my first action with Climate Defiance, and I'm a big fan of how their young leadership is running things. They need our support. They're holding a fundraiser on January 3rd at 6 p.m. with Ayanna Presley and Stephen Dodenzinger. The location is TBD in Boston. Folks can follow their Twitter, Climate Defiance, at Climate Defiance, to find the location when announced. Also, let's band together on the even more important project of making I paid for this breakfast, you didn't a thing. Left is best. That's great. It's too bad. I'm going to be up in that area in mid-January for my
your reunion,
my 40th high school reunion. Really scary. Militant apathy. Paxson is an evil bastard for doing this, and F that Supreme Court too. One of the worst times in a poor woman's life. She has to deal with this wickedness too. This enrages me. I saw my partner crawl on the floor in pain for hours when she miscarried, and she waited for it to pass. At home in the bathroom, that's the way it works. In reality, what effing world do these lunatics live in? Militant apathy. Trump literally tried to cut the HCA. McCain saved it. Right. That would have been Medicaid, though, to be fair.
Which he's now weirdly been taking credit for in speeches. He's been saying that it was a legendary moment when McCain did that, and he was responsible for that. He goes, I saved it when McCain did that.
Yeah.
Is now what he's doing.
Weird.
They were publicly feuding at the time.
Yeah,
okay.
He hates the guy. And he's like, I did that, actually.
It's amazing.
Maya, and the state shouldn't get to choose if you want to make a 1% or a 50% bet on your own life. That's essentially what it is. My doctor gives me a 50% chance of survival. I should get to choose if that's the threshold for me to end my pregnancy, without a doubt. Noble Villain, I live in a red state right now. Our goal is to get the hell out of here. All of my fiance and Elle's family is very resistant to us moving anywhere that isn't a red state. I had to straight up tell them they could choose between us staying here and never having children or moving somewhere they don't like. I absolutely will not risk her health on childbirth in a state with no exceptions and will not raise a kid in this miserable education system. Sometimes you have to be willing to take a stand about these things to people who just refuse to realize how bad all these policies are.
Yep. Good for you.
Have you read my email? If Israel continues these war crimes, they might get a very worried 5-minute Zoom call by the assistant of Biden's assistant. Pause it. Highly recommend watching Israelist. I think it's Israelism. They're doing a weekly streamings on Kinema and are pushing to be picked up for on-demand streaming via major streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, etc. Thanks for the recommendation. I really enjoyed the Q&A with director Aaron Axelman. Maybe we should have the director on. That's a good idea, maybe. Yep. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Good thing Biden isn't the Ivy League president. Otherwise, those remarks might have gotten him into trouble. All right, 2 more. Bowl of spaghetti. Liz and her people have enabled fascism in the GOP and are pushing this narrative, but the left will get us there faster. And the final I am of the day. Juneteenth is my Independence Day. Sam and Emma have been performing like D. Wade and LeBron in Miami. I need the meme on Twitter.
All right.
Let someone else figure out who's D. Wade and who's LeBron. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted in and out